people starting to arrive. There we are. So hello, everybody. Thank you very much for being there today. Hello. For all of you who may not have attended the Smart Cookies before, welcome today. Today I'm with the excellent and amazing Jon Payne. So for those who's never been there, the format is quite simple. The Smart Cookies is all about learning. I wish I could spend half an hour talking to you about how Cookies HQ is amazing and sell it, but that's not what we're going to do here. What we're going to do is hear about SEO today, and Jon is going to talk to us about the art of SEO. We've got about 20 minutes talk, 10 minutes QA at the end. If you want to use the chat to post your questions, please make sure that you change the chat to panelists and attendees, so all of you can have an actual conversations and questions. Emily Mellon here in the chat will be managing the questions, and towards the end we'll move on to a Q&A. I will try to not interrupt you, Jon, but I may interject if I have like a very important question, a very important point. But if not, I will try to not interrupt you. Without further ado, let's all raise a coffee mug for Jon. Hello, Jon. How are you?
Hello. I'm raising a coffee mug to you, Nick.
Yeah, there we go. How are you? You okay?
I'm really good, thank you. Really very well. Let me just move the chat onto the other screen. Hi, Rin. Yeah, really very well, thank you. And looking forward to doing this. Thank you so much for A, having me along, and B, putting it on.
No, please.
It's the first virtual one. I read up on Sonia's. It's brilliant.
I've just said just now that you're the next big thing to carry Rose, basically. So in the marketing world, for those who follow the marketing world,
shameful thing to say, but I'll take it this morning.
There we go. All righty. So would you like to share your screen and get you cracking? And I'm going to mute.
Yeah, let's go. Morning, peeps. Thank you for joining us this morning. Really excited to talk about websites this morning. I'm showing my screen because we're talking about the art of SEO, and I thought, it's SEO. I'm not going to do this with a PowerPoint presentation. We've all seen too many PowerPoint presentations. You are still looking at my screen, I'm afraid. But we're going to look at architecture, relevance, and tech. ART, the art of SEO. Funny, because it is kind of, there is as much science as there is art in it. And we're probably looking at the science and the art this morning. The reason I've brought this up as the intro, though, is that this is what we base our marketing and sales methodologies that we build for our clients. We base them around this framework. You've probably seen something similar if you've looked at content that we've produced, content that HubSpot produces, because we're a HubSpot Diamond partner. But it's based on the flywheel analogy. So marketing people and salespeople talk about funnels all the time. Actually, funnels forget that if you really delight your customers, they refer more customers to you. But this morning, we're talking about the attract stage of your marketing in this flywheel. So we're looking at SEO, we're going to look at content, we're going to look at your website. The thing to think about, though, is, and in the example I'm going to use, the examples I'm going to use is, this is really about attract. We're not looking at converting those people into leads this morning and then delivering them as qualified sales leads to your sales team, or delivering them as baskets and checkouts in e-commerce. But think about that all the time, because there's no point in going up here and attracting loads of people if they're the wrong sort of people, and you're never going to engage them in a sales pipeline and then delight them as customers. So everything must be focused around your customer. Reporting, hopefully you've all got Google Analytics on your website. If you haven't, stop watching this webinar now. Come back and watch the replay on Smart Cookies YouTube channel, sorry, Cookies HQ YouTube channel, and go and install up Google Analytics, because you're an idiot. Apologies, shouldn't be insulting you this early in the morning. Right, so let's dive in. We've talked about the fact that SEO is attract. Let's look at the architecture bit. So architecture being the key pieces of your web page. So here is, and I'm using ours as an example. I was tempted to say, hey, if someone wants to put their website in, I could just do a 20-minute teardown of your website. But then I thought, actually, I have a tendency to be brutal, like you're an idiot if you're not using Google Analytics. I'm going to use as. And I'm going to take you through very briefly the absolute key pieces of architecture that you must have right, and they must be populated with relevant content to make your website outrank your competitors. So, and one of those, let me be clear, Google doesn't say that there is an order to do this, right? It doesn't say item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. I put them in this hierarchy because this is what I've been doing for the last 20 something years. And it still works. Getting the hierarchy right and getting the elements in this place is right. So it works for our clients. So the first place, and you might not be able to see my screen too well, shout if you can't in the chat and I'll zoom in. But the first thing is we wanted to rank for the words conference call icebreakers. And I'll show you why in a minute. But this first place I'm showing you in the slug of, if you don't use WordPress, put in the chat what CMS you're using, and I'll try and make sure that we're addressing those other CMSs. But most people are using WordPress, right? So you will see the slug. Go and install Yoast SEO. That's the great great plugin for SEO for WordPress. But the slug is the bit that appears after your domain name. And the words we want to rank for are conference call icebreakers. Here is the words conference call icebreakers in the slug. We then repeat it in this thing called the H1 tag, conference call icebreakers, you can see here. Now, we've got some other bits in here because you don't just want to write the keywords you want to rank for. Thanks, Emily. She's shared the link to Yoast in the chat. You don't want to just write in the keywords you want to rank for. You want to write stuff that means stuff to humans, not just Google. Focus on the customer, what they're searching for, and then think about how do you rank on Google. So this is called the H1, or the headline. If you think about it like a tabloid newspaper, this is the bit where they write something racist about Meghan Markle. That's what that bit is. Or Freddie Starr ate my hamster, if you're from the 70s like me. The other place that we want you to make sure you've got those keywords is up here. This is in something called the page title. And again, in WordPress, this is really easy to populate. And in fact, if you're creating blogs in WordPress, it will try and do this automatically. So as you create those blogs, make sure you're thinking, what is the words, what is the phrase that I want this to rank for on Google? And this works for service pages and product pages as well. I'm showing you a blog because if you think about attract and engage, most people come to your website through the content that you put out that answers their questions, not the stuff that where you're trying to sell product to them. So unless you're running a really cool e-commerce site, and if you are, great. But so up here, page title, conference call icebreakers again, and I'll show you where that appears on Google. The other place that is absolutely key and people tend to forget because they're lazy and they're not very inclusive is this image here. Obviously, Google can't read this very well. I mean, it can because it's got great machine learning, but it wants to be able to see what you would describe this image as because you're a human. So jump to view source or inspect element. Here is that image, that featured image on the blog. And you can see here, there's something called alt text. And because we've used an image that makes sense, we can describe it to the search. We can describe it with the same phrase. So conference call icebreakers. And that works for people who, if they're using screen readers, and a great deal of the users to your website may well be, particularly now with the explosion of everybody using their phones. I can have a website read to me by my Android or my iPhone all the time. It used to be really expensive using software like JAWS for blind people or people who had poor eyesight, but now it's really cheap. So make sure you've got the alt text. Make sure that contains your. I'm really labouring this point because this loses us thousands of pounds. Whenever we have a client who's got who says, oh, I really need to rank higher on Google, we go look at their alt text and it turns out they haven't got anything for any of their products, any of their services. If you go through and fix this for all of your website, and yes, it's laborious, particularly if you've got thousands of pages and products, it will make you rank higher, which is great. Loses me thousands of pounds, makes you thousands. Here we're repeating the phrase in a headline, an H2 tag, the subheadline. We're using it again here in the first paragraph, and we use it repeatedly, but without spamming. As you can see, I've repeated it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, 6 times in the first 200 words, and you didn't notice because it's the structure, it's the architecture of the page. So make sure you get that right. Does doing that work? Yes. So here is, if you search for conference call icebreakers on Google, you'll see that we're number 1 or number 2. Oh, my phone reacted to me saying the words of the search engine that you're currently looking at. So I'm not going to use the word of this search engine again, because otherwise my phone's going to do another search and I can't see my timer. But yeah, so you can see here, we're normally top 3 here, and we're fighting with someone called Conference Calling and HubSpot. So we're really outperforming where we should be because we thought about getting the architecture right and some other stuff, which I'll come to. But thinking about getting the content right, how do we, and does it work in terms of traffic? Yeah, we launched it in March in the first lockdown because everybody started doing conference calls. 5,000 visits or nearly 5,000 visits in June, and we're still getting 2,000 visits a month. That's not bad. How many people have contacted us? 3. SEO is about attract. It's not necessarily about convert. This is the worst performing page on our website for conversions by some distance, but those people are coming back, or we're able to retarget them with ads, which is really useful. So how did we come up with the idea about conference call icebreakers? Well, that's where the relevance bit comes in. We're moving more onto the content rather than the architecture of your website. So when lockdown came along, we found ourselves searching for the words conference call ideas because we were running something called Digital Guzzle, which was an offshoot of Digital Gaggle, which we had to cancel at the last minute, where everybody just came on and got pissed on a Friday, which was good. We had in fact, at one point when we did one on anger management, we had more people than attend Digital Gaggle attend that course. It was like week 7 of lockdown and everybody was losing their shit. I got my anger management coach on to come and give a talk. We had lots of booze. It was fabulous. But we were looking for ways to liven up those conference calls. So the conference call ideas was what we were searching for. And we looked at it and we realized that loads of people were searching for this. And so we thought, well, what do we want to go after? Well, icebreakers is really Noisy Little Monkeys thing. We're good at having fun, right? So we looked at that. We looked at the Google suggested searches. Oh my God, this is SEO, guys. This is how you do it, right? It's not, you don't need a load of expensive tools. You can just do this shit. Then we scrolled to the bottom of the page when we looked up conference call ideas and looked for some other things. Oh, look at all of these suggested searches. Now, these suggested searches are people like you also search for these words. So this isn't Google making it up. This is Google using real human data to say, this is what you should, this is what other people are searching for. It's a gift to marketers because we can go, oh, that's really cool. I can look at all of these things and see who ranks for them because I can click on them, see who ranks for them. Does it make sense for me to produce this as part of my attract phase content that's going to get the relevant people to my website, and I then show them calls to action to bring them through to it as a sales lead to my sales team, or to bring them through to a product or service I'm selling? So you can look at that. Now, I am an SEO, so doing this stuff at scale is what's most important to me. So how can you do this at scale? How can you go and scrape these? Because Google doesn't let you. This tool, and I'm going to tweet out the links to all of these tools, but this tool called, I'll give you a link to Mike Fisher, my anger management coach. I'm sorry, I was reading the chat as we're going through. But yeah, so let me get rid of that search. I was just checking. So you can see here, conference call icebreakers, but let me go right up to the top. This is really good. This is absolute gold. So if you're using SEMrush, or you're using Google Keyword Planner, or you're using Ahrefs as a tool to suggest searches, that's all based on Google Ads data. So that's only stuff that other people are bidding on. What you want to go after is those silver bullets, right? That no one's bidding on, that you can win. You can see no one's bidding on conference call icebreakers. That's why we're getting all of this traffic. So we put the word conference call into Answer the Public. Brilliant tool. We're using the English version of that search engine that I'm not going to name because my phone goes off. And we are using, using the British version in English. It comes up with, and I will zoom in here because it's difficult to see, but it comes up with these really cool graphs, which show you what people are searching for. So this is questions that are related to that. So can conference call on WhatsApp? Can't conference call on iPhone? The darker the green, the more volume there is for that phrase. The lighter the green, the less volume. So you start to get an idea of what your potential customer is searching for and how many of them are searching for it. But these weren't really relevant to us because we weren't trying to do conference calls on iPhones. We were thinking, this is for someone who's already got Zoom. So we scroll down and we look at the visualization or the data for prepositions, can, for, is, with. So it's done the search for conference call with, it's done the search for conference call to, and then it's scraped all of those suggestions to give us a load of potential things we can write about. We've got comparisons, and then down here, as you saw, we have conference call icebreakers, which is where what we thought, that's what we'll go for. We think that's got enough volume of search. Let's go for it. If we go and look this up in Ad Planner or in SEMrush, there's no volume of search. But as I've just shown you, it drove us 4,000 visits in the second, 5,000 visits nearly in the third month of being live. So that's one thing about relevance, is thinking, what are the problems that my potential customers are having that are either directly related or obliquely related to the products and services we sell? Let me write content about that because I know about it. So we obviously know about conference calls because we run lots of them. Our customers run fewer, so we can help them do cool stuff. The other bit about relevance is to look at, Google determines relevance still by understanding who links to your website and how trusted is that website. Now, I could go on. I've done training sessions that last 3 days just on this. We're not going to do that today. But if you use something like Majestic, it tries to it spiders that all of the pages, or tries to spider all of the pages that Google does, and it then will show you who links to you and in what volume. And the interesting thing to look at here is trust flow, which is how many sites link to you and how relevant are they to your industry. We're seen as a computer internet industry as well as marketing because we do so much software to support what it is we do. And the trust flow is pretty good. Look, guys, if you're getting more than 20 out of 100 on this, you're doing really well. The citation flow is how trusted are the websites that link to you. And again, if you're getting more than 20 on here, that's also really good. So the most trusted websites, Daily Mail, so annoying, BBC, Channel 4, New York Times, places like that. Least trusted websites are probably ones with juvenile or profane content or porn or guns, gambling. They're not all not very trusted, but most of the ones that in the circles that we come across in the world of SEO are really super untrusted. But also, you know, a network of Australian water filter websites. If you don't sell water filters or anything to do with water, you don't want that link. So that's why we want to look at how trusted are they, because that's the key. But it's not just about you looking at the number of links, and referring domains is the key one. How many different websites, that's the referring domains, versus how many actual links are on each page. You really want lots of referring domains and not too many actual links, because that shows that there's a nice ecosystem of websites that link back to yours, but they haven't got hundreds of links on each page. As is a bit wonky. I've never been happy about that, but it's how it goes. We've got people that are doing negative SEO against us. Don't worry, it's a thing that doesn't really fucking work. So I don't know why they try, but they do. We've got so many links from porn websites to our website. Stop doing it. It's fucking useless. We still outrank you. I'm a little bit annoyed about that this morning, aren't I? Sorry about swearing on your webinar. It's not a, I can help you probably, Bavy. I don't know what with. Give us a bit more question. I'm sure we can do it. But it's not a one-horse race. It's a 3-horse race. So I came up against Six and Flow and Struto, who are 2 of our biggest competitors in the UK, yesterday in a pitch situation. And I thought, well, how do they rank against us? Well, we outrank them on all of the key metrics on Majestic. That doesn't mean we're going to win. Majestic isn't Google. But what we can do is go and look at all of the people who link to them and think, what relationships do they have with the people that link to them? What content have they created that is worthy of a link back? And how do we outperform that? I need to go and build relationships with those people. I need to go and build some content that's relevant for those people to link back to me, those websites to link back to me. So that's the relevant side of what we're talking about. And we've got 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes to talk about tech. So let's jump into that. First, we can't hear you, Bavy, because it's a webinar, so no one else has we're not going to turn your mic on. You can ask questions here, but make it so that it goes to all panelists and attendees in the chat. First thing to do is go to your website and put in /robots.txt. That's one of the files that Google and Bing come along and look for immediately. So make sure it exists, and make sure in it you have a link to this thing called your sitemap. Your sitemap isn't a page on your website that shows all of the links in a pretty way of all of the pages on your website. That is very, very 1990s. Your sitemap, follow the link, should look something like this. It shows you all of the pages on your website that you would like to be spidered by Google and Bing, and the date they were last modified, for instance. There can be other details in there, but that's what you want. You really need that working. If it's not working, talk to your SEO. Next thing you want to do is go and look at some of the key pages on your website and use this tool here. It's called Lighthouse. There it is. You can download it for Chrome. It's built by Google. That probably means it has an idea about what ranks. Make sure that your performance is good. SEO, these are all quantitative. They are, have you got all of the things filled in, but they're not qualitative. So have you got all of your page titles filled in, and all of that gives you a high SEO score, but actually have you got relevant stuff in there? No, it won't tell you that. It'll just tell you whether or not you've got those boxes ticked. But one of the things is performance. That's absolutely key. Oh, look, it's first in the list. It's more important than all the other stuff. Get your performance above 75. Get it to 80 or 90 if you can. Then you're going to really go well. But how do we do that? I can show you that in any second. But it's an SEO conversation, so I might get some SEO questions before that, Babby, but I'd be happy to show you that. How do you do that? Well, Google tells you. If you see these things, it tells you where the problems are, and then it gives you all of the problems on your website and how you can fix them. So you can send that to your web developer to get them fixed. It's called Lighthouse. Go and get it on Chrome. Moving on from Lighthouse, and I know I've only got 2 minutes. I might run about 30 to 50 seconds over. Let's call it a minute. Core Web Vitals. Google is talking about launching this as part of the algorithm in May. So make sure that you have got access to Google Search Console. You can go and click on this button here called Core Web Vitals for your website and see how many poor and bad URLs you've got that need improvement. I'm not going to go into it. I've got some links at the end that I'll share again, as I say, on Twitter, so that you can go and study about that. The key thing is they've said it's not going to be a ranking factor. Now, they say speed isn't a ranking factor, yet it's the first thing on their Lighthouse thing. So usability is a ranking factor. Fix your Core Web Vitals. The other thing on tech is make sure that your pages respond in the way that they should. This is a 404 page. So go and try a page. We use Kevin Bacon as a broken page for us and all of our clients. Let's go and type that in after your domain and see if you get a nice 404 image where people can find their way around your website. But using this tool from IEMA, really good SEO company, it will tell you whether or not it's a 404, which is what Google wants to see, or whether it's an OK200, which is what your web developer probably did. If it's an OK200, Google thinks that every error page on your website should be served in results, and it doesn't like doing that. Where's that tool, John? Oh, it's over here. Just look for redirect path on the Chrome Web Store. And finally, this is my friend Charlie runs this company, really good SEO and PPC agency in Bristol called Big. They recently redid their website. If you turn JavaScript off using this tool, you can't see their website. It disappears. Now, Google says this isn't a problem, but I fucking know it's a problem. Charlie is currently fixing this and kicking her web developer up the arse because he made a bit of a mistake and left a backdoor open. How do you test that? Well, go and download the Toggle JavaScript tool. I've got a load of follow-up links. We can refer to them if we need them in the questions. Yep. That's it. I'm 1 minute 16 over. Sorry.
Thank you very much, John. We will put. I think Emily is going to send a follow-up email to all the attendees, or you can subscribe to her newsletter on the Cookies website, and she's going to send all the links and show notes at the same time in this email. So just go to cookieshq.co.uk, and I think Emily can share like a newsletter subscription page, and you will get all that. The one thing I wanted, so SEO for me has always been part of what I do as a web developer. Like I'm more on the tech side more than the strategy side, basically. And the one thing I want to go back to, which I think is more towards your first point, John, is when you were showing your website, you kind of like touched upon the hierarchy of the page, the H1, H2, H3s, the page titles, and all that. The key thing to understand here is that this hierarchy is what defines an HTML structure, and it's a semantic requirement from from the HTML standard point of view. And
yeah,
the reality, one of the key things that we've learned over the years is that the simpler you keep your page structure, the better you're going to rank, obviously from an SEO perspective, but very easily the better you're going to be from an accessibility perspective. And I know you touched on very quickly about accessibility when you were talking about the alt text, and on that one I was cringing a bit, because on the alt text example, for example, I personally would be on the camp that says the alt text is meant to describe what the image is for people that have like a poor reading eyesight, that have like an limited reader. Therefore, here the only thing that would hear is, again, yet another 9-way whatever, where it would, I would have liked to see this image to be described as a glass with ice cube and a title saying these, for example.
yeah,
You can still put the words that you want, but I think it's key to say the alt text is here for people with accessibility reader devices, and that they're for them to understand what the page is, more than us putting more keywords into it. So that's the only one where we probably disagree slightly.
Which is brilliant. And you know what? I agree. I think you're absolutely right. We could have been a bit more, particularly on that example, we could have been much more useful, because it's got ice in a glass. It's kind of close. But yeah, I was using it more as a point of, so one of the questions is, how can you get leads for e-commerce products and projects at a low cost? And one of them is to use lots of images and describe the images with the proper description, because that will work. A lot of your competitors won't be doing it.
I think
the only thing, Bavi, but
the thing is, when we go for e-commerce, I don't know if we are working right now with 2 e-commerce on an SEO project, actually, 2 e-commerces, and there is a bit more that comes into play, in my view, and it'd be nice to see where you sit on that fence. But when you go to e-commerce, you have something that is called JSON LD, which is basically a description to Google about your page, so Google doesn't have to parse the page. You tell Google what the page is about. So you tell what's the product, what's the price, what the variants, blah blah blah. So that's about Google understanding what the products are and where every single key piece of information are. But I guess the biggest thing is then, if you really want to rank, for me, from an e-commerce perspective, what we've seen is just hire these guys and work with a marketing plan to actually create content around your product. Like, your product page are going to be pretty difficult to rank on their own, but creating a content strategy that will help you ranking on a long-term keyword for your product is probably what I would recommend, especially if you're on a bootstrap budget or a shoestring budget. Is probably the right way for me to do it. But
and making sure you've got your product schema sorted as you've described, absolutely key. But yeah, the way to get around it, if other people have got bigger budget, is, as you say, create content around the product, the problems that your products solve, and use that as attract content, and then highlight that you've got a product that helps solve the problem that someone has just searched for on Google when they've arrived on your blog. So, so one of the examples I always use is, how can I get rid of bad breath? Because obviously I suffer terribly. Thank God for Zoom. I don't suffer terribly. My wife does, because she has to listen to me talk and smell me. But so it'll be chewing gum, better dental hygiene. So there are blogs about this, obviously. Mints, mouthwash, clean your teeth better, get your cavities fixed. I don't know, other stuff, right? If you had a blog post about that and you sold mints, one of the calls to action in it would be, by the way, we sell mints, go and have a look at them here. And that's what people forget, is that's the easy thing to do with your on-page content. It's not necessarily link worthy. That's the reason that digital PR works so well. And the reason Carrie Rose is doing so well is she's an absolute monster and full of amazing ideas about good PR stories and can get them sold. Good digital PR stories. But yeah, so having that kind of combined with a digital PR, or I don't want to get into sort of saying link building, but a link acquisition campaign is really, really useful, and will get you lots of more traffic.
I think it's the key. Is like there was an era a couple of, like, probably 5-7 years ago, where we all thought that there were mechanics, that we were going to be more intelligent than Google and what's not. And the reality is, like, the more useful you are and the more straightforward you are in your content, the likelihood of you ranking is probably higher, basically. Like, yes, there are mechanics, but if you have a lot of budget, like if you don't have a massive budget, just follow the rules and actually like produce content in a regular basis. At least that's what we've seen on the Cookies blog and the Cookies website, is producing content that's been a top priority for years, and that's what drives most of the traffic to the website and the SEO work that Emily has been doing, because we may have missed a couple of those things, so the SEO work pays off. It's just, I think one thing that people have to realize is that it will pay off, but it's not an instant thing. Like, it's not going to pay off tomorrow. It will pay off in 3 to 6 months, and all of a sudden you will wondering like, oh, where's those visits coming from? Why all of a sudden I've got loads of leads entering my forms on my site, kind of thing. And this is now 6 months of work paying off, basically. So
we one of the things that Nick says, my wife, the managing director of Noisy Little Monkey, one of the things she says is, just remember that all Google is trying to be, when we're talking about organic search, all Google is trying to be is a proxy for human trust. So who trusts you, and why should they trust you? And often having the relevant content and relevant links is enough to win that. Now, if you're in a really competitive industry, you need to do more than, and you haven't done anything for a while, you need to really put your effort into getting that flywheel spinning, right? And it takes a long time to get it spinning, but once it's spinning, great, which is what you're saying about content. Once you've got that content going, it'll drive traffic for ages. We're getting, I don't know, I mean, tens of thousands, probably over egging the pudding, but probably over 10,000 visitors a month from organic search. But we've been doing content, and we only just started paying for ads because we think that would be an interesting thing to do. But we've been doing content for 12 years. And people are like, well, I need that. Well, you've not done anything. If you're a big company, you can really start to do some cool stuff. But I suspect on this, we've got lots of small businesses and founders. So what they need to think about is what's that content that I can build now and do now that's unique and interesting and useful for my customer base, that doesn't necessarily try and slavishly sell my product, and then get that on your website, and then start to think about how do I acquire relevant links as well. But the content is key to begin with.
Give me an amazing segue, because 2 weeks ago on the previous Smart Cookies, we had the amazing Sonia Nissen, who talked about creating content that connects with the audience. So if you head to the Cookies HQ YouTube channel, you will actually see another video like these where Sonia explains how to create content. So that's probably a nice segue. Look, Jon, thank you very much for your session today. I've really enjoyed it. It was really nice, and as usual, very pumped up. Now, we are going to be back in 2 weeks with another Smart Cookies. This time we're going to have Ian Blair from a company called Revoco, and we are going to talk about the art of recruitment, I guess, this time. So how do you attract and recruit the right people for your team? That's going to be an interesting one. Like, as Cookies is growing, it's always like something that is on the back burner. It's like, we have to look better now. From a recruitment perspective, we have to make looking at ourselves better. But no, it was very lovely to see you. I think everything is going to be on our website, so the Cookies website, probably on the Noisy Little Monkey channels. If you're not following Jon and their team on LinkedIn, please go for it, because you're in for a treat. These guys are just like, well, these folks are just amazing, and they're funny, and they put a lot of like very interesting and useful content. So go and follow them over there. And I will thank you, everybody, for today, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.